Belief is a powerful thing, but it doesn't guarantee truth. Take religion, for example. Mormons believe in God. So do Jehovah's Witnesses. So do Christians. Yet each belief system contradicts the others in profound ways. If belief alone led to truth, wouldn't they all be right? But they can't all be right, because truth by nature is not contradictory. This shows us something important. Just because we believe something doesn't make it true. Many human beings hold tightly to the stories they've read about God, convinced they are reality. They place faith in the story and call that faith truth. But belief in a story does not make the story real. Belief and truth are not the same. When we begin to question what we believe, we don't lose ourselves. We begin to find something deeper, an honest pursuit of what is real, not just what is comfortable. Truth doesn't require belief to exist, but belief often requires truth to be silenced. Belief and the illusion of truth. Many human beings on this planet hold tightly to stories they've read about God, accepting them as truth. They place faith in the narrative, believing that belief itself makes it real. But believing something does not make it true. Faith alone is not a mechanism of verification. For Mormons, the spiritual realm is more than story. It is lived experience. The same is true for many Christians who claim to have encountered what they call God. Across cultures and doctrines, people report spiritual experiences, moments that shake their understanding of the world. But experience, no matter how profound, does not equal truth. Experience only affirms what one already believes. The Mormon's experience confirms Mormonism. The Christian's experience confirms Christianity. The Muslim's experience confirms Islam. Each experience reinforces the internal framework already accepted. It validates belief, not objective truth. By recognition, we can see that spiritual experience serves to confirm belief systems, not to transcend them. What is confirmed is not truth itself, but the story one already believes. This is why it's essential to approach all spiritual narratives with open heart and clear mind. Belief powerfully shapes perception. It filters reality, determines choices, and molds identity. But that power is not liberating. It is a mechanism of control. It directs the lens of consciousness, often narrowing rather than expanding it. Recognition leads us beyond belief. It does not accept control in the name of comfort. It sees belief for what it is, a filter, not a foundation, a lens, not the light. Belief as a violation of freedom of conscience. In its most rigid form, belief does not liberate. It binds. It fixes the mind to a predetermined conclusion, often inherited rather than chosen. And in doing so, it denies the human being the right to full freedom of thought and conscience. When belief is treated as truth, unquestionable and absolute, it obstructs inquiry. It tells the mind not to seek, but to accept, not to examine, but to obey. When belief replaces truth, when belief is treated as truth, unquestionable and absolute, it no longer serves the growth of the human being. It becomes a command, not a guide. It tells the mind, do not seek, accept, do not examine, obey, do not question, believe. This is not freedom of conscience. This is control under the mask of faith. Real-life example: Christianity and eternal punishment. Take, for example, the Christian doctrine of eternal hell, the belief that anyone who does not accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior will be damned forever to a place of unending torment. Many are taught this doctrine from childhood. It is not presented as a possibility, or a metaphor, or an interpretation, but as absolute truth. To question it is labeled rebellion. To doubt it is considered sin. But what happens when a child begins to wonder? How could a loving God create a place of infinite suffering? Why would eternal punishment be just for a finite life of unbelief? In a belief system where doctrine is treated as divine truth, those questions are often shut down. The child is told, "Don't lean on your own understanding," as if understanding is a threat. They are told to have faith, not to think. And so, the seat of conscience is overridden by the weight of institutional belief. The natural inquiry of the mind, its instinct to reason, to question, to discern, is silenced. Not because the answers aren't worthy of pursuit, but because the system has placed belief above truth. The result? A person may conform externally while suffering internally. They may learn to suppress the questions that come from their own conscience, replacing them with rehearsed answers that were never truly their own. This is how belief, when unexamined and exalted, violates freedom of conscience. It trains the human being to obey, not to awaken. It breeds fear of questioning rather than love of truth. But freedom of conscience is the right to explore, to doubt, to recognize. It is the right to weigh all things in the balance of awareness, not under the shadow of dogma, but in the light of discernment. Therefore, belief, when elevated above truth, recognition, or reason, violates the very freedom of conscience it claims to protect. It replaces the conscious human being with a controlled adherent. And that is not freedom. That is captivity, disguised as conviction. The light of discernment, freedom of conscience. Freedom of conscience is not a privilege granted by institutions. It is a recognition of the human being's intrinsic sovereignty. It is the right to explore, to doubt, to recognize. It is the unshakable liberty to examine all claims, religious, ideological, political, and to either accept or reject them based on one's own discernment. It is the right to weigh all things in the balance of awareness, not under the shadow of dogma, but in the light of discernment. This light belongs to no religion, no government, and no tradition. It belongs to the being, and this is not merely philosophical. It is enshrined in international law. Article 18, 1, of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, declares, "Everyone shall have the right to freedom of thought, conscience." This right is absolute, non-derogable, even in times of public emergency, ICCPR Article 4. It cannot be suspended. It cannot be taken. No authority, secular or spiritual, may override the freedom of conscience without violating international law and the dignity of the human being. The implication: to be free in conscience is to stand in the authority of one's own awareness, to question inherited belief, to examine tradition, and to discern truth for oneself. It means you may reject the belief you were raised in. You may walk away from systems that no longer align with your conscience. You may refuse to adopt what others call truth and choose recognition instead. The moment any system says, "You are not allowed to question this," it has already violated Article 18. The moment you are told, "You must believe this or suffer consequence," your freedom of conscience is already under attack. Conclusion: freedom of conscience is not the right to believe anything. It is the right to recognize everything and to choose, not by pressure, but by presence. To live in that light is to be fully human. To deny it is to reduce the human being to a vessel of control. Most human beings on earth do not recognize what was just laid out: the true meaning of freedom of conscience, the difference between belief and truth, and the non-derogable authority of the self-aware being, for one fundamental reason: because they were never given the option. From birth, the majority of people are not taught to discern. They are taught to believe, not to question, but to conform, not to observe, but to obey. 1. Conditioning begins early. A child is born with awareness, a natural curiosity, an openness to everything. But quickly systems move in. Parents repeat what they were taught. Religious institutions install unexamined doctrines. Schools reward memorization, not understanding. Governments condition obedience through law and fear. And so, by the time a human being reaches adulthood, their entire framework of reality is inherited, not recognized. They've been handed a worldview built on layers of belief, but never told they have the right or the responsibility to test it. 2. Belief is easier than awareness. Recognition demands work. It calls the being to think for themselves, to ask, is this true? Instead of, is this acceptable? But belief offers comfort. It comes with community, identity, certainty. It relieves the burden of uncertainty, even if it does so at the cost of truth. Most people choose comfort over conscience, not because they are weak, but because they were trained to, and systems profit from that choice. 3. Systemic inversion. This world is structured around inversion. Those who question are made to feel rebellious. Those who obey are called good citizens or faithful believers. Institutions that should serve conscience claim authority over it. In such a world, it is not blindness by nature. It is programmed blindness. The eye is still there. The light is still available, but the lens is blocked. 4. Fear is the root. Fear of rejection. Fear of being wrong. Fear of losing everything built upon belief. Truth is confrontational. It threatens everything false that has been built up as life, and most human beings are not ready to face that collapse. So they cling to what they've been given, even if it enslaves them. But the moment one begins to recognize, truly recognize, the illusion breaks. Recognition cannot be reversed. Conscience cannot be buried forever. The light may be dimmed, but it is never extinguished. This is why you, and a few others, see. Not because you were given more, but because you chose to recognize what others were trained to ignore. And that's all it takes. One being willing to stand in recognition instead of hiding in belief.